Okay, so welcome everybody to the Energy Data Insights on AWS for the OSDU Data Platform Enablement session. This is our second session that we're hosting to highlight the recent developments with Energy Data Insights and OSDU. My name is Yuri Gubanov. I'm the Energy Partner Solution Architect, and I have a few co-presenters joining me today, and I'll let them introduce when they are up on the agenda. So the agenda for today is to do a quick recap of what we presented in the last session, which was in February of this year. And then we have two exciting presentations. One is the Energy Data Insights Workbench by Vlad from AWS. And another one is the partner presentation by Petrabytes from Sashi. And again, Vlad and Sasha will introduce themselves once we are at those time slots. Let me quickly check if everybody got admitted during. Okay, yeah. So more folks have joined. Welcome, everyone. So I wanted to do a quick recap of what we showcased in the first session earlier this year. First things first, video recording took us a little bit longer to post than we anticipated, but it's now posted. It's in Amazon.com, Energy and Utilities, OSDU Data Platform site, and you can find that if you scroll down and look at the link under the EDI enablement sessions. And in the first sessions, we highlighted what Energy Data Insights is. We did a quick overview and a demo. And then we talked about the upcoming release 3 milestone 22. So one of the kind of great announcements is R3M22 was released on time, including all those features that we showcased in February. It is now available, including the rock and fluid samples, DDMS, geospatial consumption zones, support for Amazon S3 intelligent turing, and all of those other innovations that we brought by the customer requests. If you are joining and if you are not on mute, can you please put yourself on mute? That would be appreciated. And now that the R3M22 is delivered, wanted to share some links. Once I kind of transition to Vlad and Sasha's talk, I'll post those links in the chat so you can easily capture that. But the recording for this meeting is going to be posted similar to the previous one on the website. And we are figured out our problem with the survey, so the survey will come out after this session. So our 3M22 details, again, are available on aws.amazon.com on the solutions page, or you can search for the Energy Data Insights on AWS. We're also happy to announce that now there is an offering of the Express for Energy Data Insights on AWS Marketplace, and I'll post a link in the chat for that as well. And you can explore that at your own pace and see what the offering entails. And finally, we are soft launching the Energy Data Insights for OSDU Data Platform workshop at the link at the very bottom of the slide. And this is for you to kind of browse on your own pace if you want to just read the documentation, or you can subscribe to the offering and try the whole workshop on your own. We are talking to 47 Lining and amongst ourselves how we can offer that in maybe a more formal setting as we go. But the workshop is aimed for developers who want to work with OSDU, Energy Data Insights, try the APIs, and learn a bit more how to develop on top of the platform. With that, I am going to turn it over to our first presenter, Vlad, and while I'll post the links in the chat. Vlad, take it away.
All right. So thank you, Yuri. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Your screen, you're not sharing your screen anymore, Yuri.
Okay, hold on. Something went wrong. Is it back?
Yes, it is. All right. So thank you, everybody, for joining. Yeah, I'm Vlad Frazal. I'm a principal distinguished architect here on AWS. I joined AWS 2.5 years ago. Previously, I was working on another cloud provider. I've been working with IT for a while, for a few decades. And I've been particularly working with OSDU since the beginning. OSDU, for those who are not familiar with, and I hope many of you are, I believe many of you are, but for those who are not familiar, is an industry data platform that it was developed initially for subsurface data, but now it works for energy data, right? And it's a very interesting. So if you want to know more, there's another recording that Yuri shared, right, Yuri, that explains everything about EDI and OSDU. So feel free to take a look at that, right? However, when thinking about OSDU and how to use it, it can be cumbersome and it can be, how can I say this, not straightforward how to use OSDU. So when we think about if you are a developer, for example, or if you are a systems data scientist and you want to use OSDU, there are several steps that you have to take, right? So engineers, system operators, data administrators, everybody spend too much time doing basic operations. So if you look at the left side of the screen right there, this is a specific one part of the code needed to connect to OSU and run a search. If you look at the right side, this is what we want, right? We want to do a simple command and really simplify everything. So how do we do this? This is what we've been thinking, and that's why on AWS we decided to create the workbench, Energy Data Insights Workbench. It's targeted to EDI, our implementation of OSDU, and I'll soon open source the code so that everybody will be able to download, install, and play with it and contribute to the code itself, right? So if we move to the next slide, please. Let's think a little bit about the personas, right? Who are the personas that the EDI workbench addresses and targets, right? So first on the upper left, let's think about the developer. If you are a developer or an application developer, you want to create and maintain applications that consume OSDU services, right? They call the APIs. And you want to be able to just call the API and execute your tasks. Yeah, execute your tasks, right? So it's spending less time handling exceptions, for example, and directly call the APIs, right? That's what a developer wants. If you are on the upper right, you are a data scientist. A data scientist wants to collect, analyze, interpret OSDU data. A data scientist is not really does not want to spend time creating a Jupyter notebook, authenticating to OSDU, getting the token, all of that, right? A data scientist wants to access the data files safely, preserving OSDU integrity. If you are a system administrator on the lower left side, system administrator installs and maintains OSDU system and want to check, is it open? Is it down? Is it working? Want to create a script to do some work to automate, right? And if you are a business analyst just want to use the software, don't want to spend time. So how do we help those personas to consume OSDU in an easier way, right? If we move to the next slide, one way is to use the Energy Data Insights Workbench. So the EDI Workbench unlocks the power of EDI environment. So for engineers, it minimizes engineer time, and I'll show you some pieces of the code, and I'll do a quick demo of the CLI, right? If you're a developer, you can use the APIs to simplify and expedite your development. Now, if you want to use the underlying low-level APIs, you can, of course. But if you want to use something simpler, and I will show that, you can use the EDI workbench. Data science wants to, quickly and effortlessly gather data. Admin wants to operate, right? So this is what we do. We boost the operation and management of the environment. And for business insight, we also focus on the decisions, and the EDI workbench handles all the complex technical details. So moving to the next slide, how do we do that, right? So basically, the workbench has three main components. On the left side, we have the EDI SDK. The EDI SDK is a wrapper that I developed to the OSDU APIs. And it embeds a lot of the logic and a lot of what is needed to get it started. It's already there, pre-programmed, pre-developed to you. It works with pretty much any language. The magic here is because I'm using a AWS library called JSII. JSII allows me to create a library and a class in one language, in TypeScript, and use that in pretty much any language, Python, C, Go, whatever you want to use, .NET, whatever you want to use, JSII works, right? So the first APIs that I developed and wrapped are the APIs around the core services and some basic admin operations like adding a user or using and bootstrapping the users and entitlements. But I'm adding more every day. Now that I have an SDK, it was easier for me to create a CLI. So I decided to create a CLI to help the system operator. So we have a CLI as well where you do plain text commands and it allows to create scripts to automate, right? Again, the core services, right? But also I'm adding a lot more, including ingestion and so on and so forth. And last but not least, the EDI library. So if you are a data scientist or a business user, there's something that I've developed and I'm developing, it will be out there soon, which is how to create a Jupyter Notebook connector that will easily connect to OSDU and query the data from EDI, right? How do we do that? So I developed that as well. So you can streamline your work, right? And soon you'll be connected with Bedrock and all the good stuff from generative AI as well. So if we look at these three pillars, the SDK, the CLI, and the library, there's a lot that can be done with the workbench, right? From simplifying your API calls to streamlining and running commands on command line interface to a library that automates everything, right? So moving to the next slide, please. So we're enhancing EDI with SDK and CLI. As I said, SDK is a collection of tools and libraries. CLI is a text-based interface, and I'll show that to you all in a second. So next slide, next slide, please. So the SDK, as I said, it's a set of tools, includes libraries, documentations, code samples. It streamlines application standardization and faster time to market, right? The idea is to accelerate the development of SDU applications. And the CLI, it's a command line program that accepts text inputs. It's a basic CLI, right? So if you are familiar, if you're a SysOps, I believe you like CLIs. I do. I like CLIs very much, and I think it makes our life easier, right? So that's available as well. And next slide. And the library, as I said, helps deploying additional AWS services integrated with VDI. For example, creating a Jupyter notebook that already comes with all the authentication needed. We automate that. Quick operations integrating with VDI with other AWS services. For example, we're working to integrate with AppFlow to quickly deploy with AppFlow. That will make it really easy to replicate metadata from one instance to another. Happy to help with that as well. Next slide. Okay, so the value of the EDI workbench is that allows you to save time. That's what we want to do. We want you to spend less time with basic coding, less time with basic operations, and go straight to what matters to you. Next slide. All right, let me do a demo. So let me share my screen real quick. The first thing that I will show is, let me share my screen. All right, the first thing that I'm showing is the code. Of course, there's a lot of code here, but the persona here is, of course, the developer, right? So I hope you can see this, but even if you're not seeing the details, this is the kind of coding that is needed to perform a basic OSDU search. So here I'm using TypeScript and I'm defining all the interface that might be needed to run a search. If you know search, and if you've developed with OSDU before, you know that there's a lot that has to be defined. And all this code will be open source soon, right? So here is how I'm extending a basic class, a basic client to perform the search. So again, this is a code that is needed to handle all the exceptions and extend the code. And this one in particular is extending this base client here. If you look at the base client, what it does is it's checking if the required environment variables are available. It's checking, doing some error handling and creating a Cognito token. To create the Cognito token, we have to, connect with Cognito, get the variables and so on and so forth. And there's another class here that actually gets the token. So all of this to do a simple OSDU search. And it's a lot of code, as y'all can see, right? So if you are using the SDK, that's all you need to do a search. So instead of doing all of that code, the only thing you need to do is to import the SDK. And here in particular, this is a code from the CLI. So that's why I have this work here. But in fact, what you need to do the SDK is basically to check if the variables are there, and all the error handling is performed here. To declare the search, right? In this case, I'm passing the endpoint in the region, and to pass the arguments. In this case here, I'm using a kind, a query, and a limit. Why I'm using this? Well, because I want it, right? So there's a lot that you can do. You can do whatever you want when you're developing, right? So I hope it makes sense for the developers. Instead of having all that code that you had to do before, the only thing that you need is pretty much this, and that's it, right? So yeah, that's the power of the SDK. And I really love SDKs. There's a bunch of them available on Amazon, and this is one of them. So let me show you the CLI now. This is a live code, right? I'm working on it every day. So there's always new things that I'm committing. I have a few things here that are pending, right? So anyway, this is an active project, and as I said, I'll be open sourcing everything pretty soon, right? So let me show you all now a quick demo of the SDK. So what I want to do first is to list groups. So, and this is it's a live demo, so I'm using my development environment. Hopefully everything will work. So this is the command that I do to list groups, right? EWB group list. So let's see what groups I have. Hopefully this is going to work. Oh yeah, it works. So these are all the groups that I have. So look how easy it is to do something, to do a user, to create a user, I mean to list a group and to interact with my OSDU instance, with my EDI, right? So I want to do a search. Let me do a search as well. So I want to do a simple search here. So let's see this one here. So this search didn't work because I have an error here. The syntax is not okay. So the syntax here, as you can see, the syntax for search from OSDU, it's not simple, but I'm working to solve that as well. So let me do another search that will work. So I have another example here that actually works. So let me do this. I'm just searching the facility name BRK06. It worked. I got a JSON file here. You see, and what I'm sending here to run my search, this I'm still using the OSDU syntax, right? But it's still easier than going to a Postman script and writing everything, right? So if I remove the query, right? So let me remove the query here and just run a search. So I'm searching all my wells basically. So 4958 wells. So let me add another parameter here called table. I want to see on a table format. Beautiful. So it showed me 10 because the default that I have is to see 10 line items, right? So, but let me add more. Let me add 20. Let's see if this works. Oh yeah, so now I see 20 of them. So anyway, this is just a quick example of search and so let me see if I have an example here of user. Yeah, so here's how you add a user. So let me add a user. Let me call it I don't know, test2. And let me put the password here, something different, right? So I'm adding a user. Yeah, as you can see, it didn't work. Oh, actually, it worked because it's saying that the member, the user pool has to be fixed. It has to be worked, right? So I have to work my way here. But anyway, this is a live demo. As I said, this is a active development environment that I have. And sometimes, we face some errors. But this is the whole idea of having a CLI, right? You can do your search, you can do your queries, you can add user, you can remove user. I'm working on a bootstrapping to add all the permissions and things like that. So everything should be working, pretty soon. So as I said, this is a quick demo to show the power of the CLI, the power of the SDK. And as every live demo, sometimes we get some errors, and that's what makes the developing so fun, right? So I love this kind of situation and environment, right? So yeah, this is all that I had, Yuri. I showed the SDK. I did a quick demo on the CLI, and everybody. So one last time, I'll be open sourcing all this code soon. I'll also be publishing another demo on LinkedIn. So if you are connected with me on LinkedIn, please shoot me a message, and I'm happy to get on a dialogue with y'all to clarify what are the next steps and how to use and how to get engaged with this, where to get, how to download, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot more that will be coming out in the next few days, right, about this, and including the libraries, right? So exciting times, and that's all I had for today.
Thank you,
Yuri,
Vlad.
you.
Awesome presentation. Thank you so much. I don't see any questions in the chat, but if there is any questions, feel free to either come off mute or type your question for Vlad. Again, we'll post all the presentations so you can view the contact links and all of that. If you're passionate about the SDK, CLI, and developing an OSDU, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Vlad directly, and we'll be happy to help.
Exactly right. Back to you, Yuri.
All right. Sasha, I so far
Yeah,
don't see any questions. So Sasha, will turn it over to you for the intro, and let me know if you want me to share the slides or if you wanted to share it yourself. Either way is fine.
yeah, I'll share some. Yeah. So thank you, Yuri. Thank you, Vlad. That was a really good demo. I think it gives a lot of potential. So my name is Sashi Gunturu. I'm with Petrabytes. So we are an AWS partner in this Energy Data Insights. So today my goal is to just show you what are the new updates in EDI. So I'll walk you through. So can you all hear me okay, Yuri?
Yes, we can hear
Yeah.
you when see the screen. Everything seems to be okay. Yep.
Yeah. So one of the main things is the compute cost for large scale ingestion. So we are now supporting Elastic MapReduce, EMR, from AWS. So that significantly helps in reducing the compute cost, and it gives you a lot of options with Graviton processors, which can reduce up to 30 to 40% of your compute. So it gives you a whole bunch of different options on when you're using large scale compute to select different sizes of your different configurations of your cluster, especially for large scale ingestion. Then we are also, the EDI transformer is now using AWS Bedrock. Bedrock, as you know, it has so much functionality with agents and all of that. So now the EDI transformer, in addition to Llama 2, it supports Claude 3, which is very high performant LLM model that AWS is providing through the Bedrock. So the good thing with Bedrock is now you can train new models or new RAG implementations and attach it to Claude 3. So what we have done is the EDI transformer, the OSDU LLM model is now using Claude 3 in addition to Llama 3 model. So then we also have some improvements on data quality. Now the users can specify thresholds. So for example, if you have some data set like well log that is beyond certain range, it'll now flag as part of the business rule to say, okay, this data, there is something wrong with this data set. So let us say you have 1,000 gram per cc. It'll say, okay, it has to be, maybe it's 1,000 kg per meter cube, right? So for density and bulk density. So those are the kind of things that data threshold now offers. And then we are also implementing technical assurance as part of the data lineage. So this is very important because it tells you who did what, like who approved the ingestion, who did the quality check, like an SME. So it has a complete trail along with the audit log, but the technical assurance is now captured as part of the data lineage in your manifest. So when you go and check your manifest, it shows you who did the approval and who did the ingestion. So that way you can have a clear data lineage of your of all your both the master data and the work products. Some of the experience when we started working with operators, they wanted an easy way to browse the S3 bucket. So now within the EDI interface, you have the easy way to navigate through S3 buckets, whatever you have access to. So that way you can see where your data is and then align your pipeline according to that. One of the main aspects, people want to do a visual QC. That means they want to see what data is ingested even before you ingest. So for example, if you have an LAS log, they want to see even before it's ingested. So you can do a quick preview before you do the full ingestion. That way you can see, is the data right, and all of those kind of things. So right now we have enabled for well logs, but we are actively enabling for any data type, especially for seismic. So that is coming very soon. But the whole concept of data preview, even before the ingestion, is now being introduced. And then in terms of the transformers, I think the idea of a transformer is EDI accelerates the whole data ingestion by doing a quick source to target mapping. But now, as the OSDU is evolving, we are now having an easy way to search all the attributes very quickly by a quick search in addition to the transformer. Okay. So just going into the details now, the EMR compute. So this is the typical workflow for your data ingestion. So we do all the source data analysis. We do the OSDU attribute mapping with the source target mapping, and then we generate the manifest. We do the QC validation. We approve. We provide an option for the SME to approve, and then we ingest into the data. Right now. Previously, it was supporting with different kinds of clusters. Now we are also supporting the native EMR cluster. And as I mentioned, essentially, these are all Spark jobs that are running on EMR. And eventually, it will lead to significant saving on EMR when the users start implementing. So the main advantage is typically your well workloads are very small, the data sizes. So you can have one kind of cluster, like a small cluster. And for your seismic, you can have a different kinds of cluster. And more importantly, if you want to ingest data faster, now you can spawn up multiple EMR clusters. So that's what is being supported now with the scale. So I think this is very exciting in terms of the overall product roadmap, and I think it's a very significant milestone that we are almost close to achieving there. So this will be available in July. So this is how the EMR clusters will look like. These are the Spark jobs that are running on EMR. So for example, this is a well data generation, well data validation, and then like it can do a consolidated ingestion when you have a whole bunch of files. So it can do all kinds of ingestion here. So one of the key things we are supporting in the newer version is it can now connect to databases. So it's not always file system. So if you have source databases, we can connect to the source database, like a relational database like SQL servers, and ingest the data. There are some operators that are also providing REST APIs. So the ingestion is now becoming more and more smarter. So we can connect to any kind of both structured and unstructured data sets through APIs or through file systems on S3 bucket. Okay. And then this is a significant milestone where we are now supporting Claude 3, because the whole evolution of EDI will be eventually we are getting into more agent-based, like how Vlad was showing through command line, right? So that can all be driven by agents. So in the near future, we will see most of the EDI will be driven by agents. I think it's a very exciting opportunity with especially with AWS Bedrock, because it gives you all the access to all the large language models, and you can provide your own RAG as well as provide the functional approach of executing tasks, right? So here is an example where we are showing you like the Claude 3 model being used, and you can ask simple natural language queries like what is the OSDU attribute for well name? It comes up with the facility name, and more importantly, it will give you where it came from, the source of the data. So that is how you can validate if the LLM model that is provided by EDI transformer is actually performing correctly or not. So that is how you can validate all of that. Okay. Now, with respect to data quality, so this is a new interface we have added where the users can now specify their own rules. So, for example, if you see most of the OSDU attributes, there is a lot of data. In the source data sets, all of them may not be available. So you have reference data, you have extended data sets. The source data could be all kinds of unstructured data, right? So you as an operator can define what are the minimum mandatory attributes that you want to capture as part of the metadata. So in this case, for each of the different data types, you can say, okay, this is the basin, these are the attributes for the basin and also the data types. So you can specify that updated mandatory attributes. And then you can also, these are the thresholds I talked about, like here, for example, all the, like the well logs, here you can say what is the minimum threshold and the maximum threshold. So that means when the data comes up, let us say you have a well log, you're drilling in a specific field and you're capturing the data. Suddenly you see it is like 10,000 feet when the TD is only like 6,000 feet. The system will immediately flag something is wrong with your data that you're ingesting, right? So either you check the legal tag, you check the data sets itself, the LW, MW logs and all of that. So that is how what we are trying to do is detect the problems way ahead before you do any kind of brute force processing. And that is the whole idea with adding more and more business rules on the data quality. And then we also have the ability to identify the duplicates. So based on a certain criteria, the users can define, like for example, for a well log, you can say the well log header in your LAS file will uniquely identify based on a run number and the well name. You can say that is how I'm going to uniquely identify that this is a unique file. Like for example, if you have different kinds of resistivities, right? You can say shallow resistivity, you can say run 1, run 2, run 3, right? So all three are three different LAS files. So how do you determine what is a unique record, right? So you can have a combination of those keys to say this is a unique record in terms of unique data set. So that is how you process all of that. So the idea is EDI is helping you to approach data quality even before you ingest, like by scanning the data, identifying flags as much as possible. So this will reduce a lot of unnecessary compute, brute force compute. So this is another important aspect as part of the technical assurance. So in OSDU, the data quality and technical assurance is still evolving. Right now, you have a lot of basic examples. But what we have done is now as part of the manifest. So here, what you see is when you do a query on wells, and like here I'm querying the F11, the well name. So it brings up all the OSDU attributes, and when you click on the data lineage, here is where you are capturing the technical assurance. So this will tell you who did what when, and what is the header information, like who approved it, all of that. So this will help in part of your data audit as well. So the data audit also gives you the entire workflow of what happened to that record even before it's ingested, right? So the technical assurance is telling you once the data is ingested, and this can be discoverable, like somebody is like like you are giving it to a vendor. So you can say only the approved records are given to the vendor, not just whatever is just available in OSDU, because there could be a lot of quality issues and things like that. So again, the idea is to track the entire data lifecycle with data audit and technical assurance and data quality, and to capture who did what at what time and what is happening to the record throughout the lifecycle of, as long as it exists in OSDU. Okay. So here is how it captures the account owner, who did what, like who ingested, the record name, all of that, all the attributes, the data governance role, and then like who ingested, right? So here is the one. These are the people that who reviewed it and then who approved it, right? So that is how we can track all of this information. This is a simple example of the S3 browser that you can see on your in EDI. So you can click whatever is being accessible, you can click here. So the idea is you typically have a large data lake on a bunch of files. So you want to basically say, I want to only ingest this kind of seismic data into OSDU. So you can select those folders, and during the ingestion, even though you have like 5 terabytes, maybe you want to process only 50 gigabytes of data, right? So those are the options that you can now specify as part of your input pipeline. Okay. So this is the data preview even before you ingestion. So you can do a raw data preview. You can see the last header. the file header, and you can see all of this and can preview as it is. This is even before you do any kind of ingestion. So on the fly, you can select and you can preview the data. Okay? As I said, in the transformer, you can now do the search. So as and when new OSDU attributes, used OSDU schemas are available, we can just provide that here as part of the search. Okay. So now I'll do a quick demo. So this is the EDI interface. So I will just show you the technical assurance first, the data lineage here. So you do a search here. You get all the records. So now what is happening is we are getting all the different audit logs. So this record has been lot of times it has been edited. So I wanted to show you what all is possible through the audit logs. So here is the entire list of what's happening, right, to the entire record. Who did what, generated, validated, all of that. This is the entire transaction history. So it shows you the partition, the member details, the legal tag, the activity, what happened to that record, the timestamp, the source data, all of that. And then you have the legal policies here. And here is where you can look at the lineage and you can search here for technical assurance. So this is a quick way of searching through your JSON. So here is where you have the technical assurance. You can look at all the reviewers here. Here is where, as I just showed you, all the records and what happened to, so who is the approver, who is all of that. So that is how you're able to track all the details of what happened to every record. And then I'll quickly show you an S3 bucket browser. So this is the S3 bucket browser. So here you can select the bucket. You can navigate through each of these buckets. So all of this access control, like who has access to what, is now we have an RBAC integration here. So you can define the roles for each of them. So you have product development, IT, SME, drilling engineer, production engineer. So now we have the capability to define new roles, and based on that, we can control who has access to which data set, right? So now we'll go in more detail later, but essentially the roles, OSDU provides this all like access by service groups and data groups and all of that, right? But after that, you can also control through your ping identity or your IDP who has access to which feature in your software. So that role-based is being controlled here. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this is you can even control who has access to the specific parts of the S3 bucket as well through this by applying the policies, right? So this is evolving, which gives you a lot more granularity of control of all your resources based on who has access to what data, depending on the role. And these are the business rules. So here, as I mentioned, these are all the mandatory rules. So based on the object type, all the different object types, like whether it's master data or work products. So you can say this is my well. So these are the basic minimum attributes we are looking at. And if you look at the basin, you have all these attributes that you can add. And so for each of the different data types, you can now enforce the business rules. So the idea is, as part of the ingestion, based on the mandatory fields, we check so we look at three things mainly: completeness, making sure all your mandatory data is there; compliance, which is basically saying the data is within this threshold, that the data is valid; and conformance, right? So conformance is basically making sure all your data types are correct, right? So those are the 3 C's that we follow in terms of the data quality. Okay. And then here is where you can go to the LLM model here. So now we are looking at the transformer. So one of the key things as I talked about, is in the data OSDU data model. So this has pretty much everything what you have in the entire OSDU with the different versions, right? So again, this is like a vector DB that we have created. So the idea is with the well logs. So for example, we have all the different schemas like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. So this is a constantly growing vector DB. So the idea is you can do a quick search. You can say, what is my sample interval for the well log, right? You can search for this. So based on this, you can get all the definitions. So these descriptions are coming from OSDU as it is. So you can look at all of that, right? Now, why is this important? Like when you have a source data, even before you do any mapping, we want to quickly go and search what are the different attributes, mandatory attributes based on the original OSDU schema, and it'll give you a quick way to navigate through all of that, right? So then here is where you have the Claude coming up. So now when I say what is my OSDU attribute for a well name, here is where you can type in a natural language text like here, like what is an OSDU attribute. You can select the context and you can select all the different options here. So again, we are doing a lot of support right now. Llama 2 and Claude is provided as an option. So you can ask natural language queries like what is an OSDU attribute for a well name, and it comes up with the data.facility name, and it also gives you the description also, right? And then it gives you what is the sample manifest, it gives you the schema, and now you can go to the actual path of your, so it opens up now the OSDU where it came from, right? So basically the idea is you can cross-check, you have a quick way to search your attributes, you can apply the model, you can apply the mapping, and then you can cross-check where it came from the source, right? So typically in a large language model, if you do a simple chat GPT search, it doesn't give you where the source it came from, it gives you all the text. So here we are trying to give you all the details as much as possible. In some cases, sometimes it doesn't work, where if you have a very vague terms, it doesn't work. In that case, it says, I don't know, and then at least then you go and change your description so that you get a better match, right? So that is how so we are giving you a lot of tools to get as closer as possible and to support all the automation. Okay. So I have a video. So now I'll show you the EMR. So here is the data ingestion pipeline. So here is where you can select your, so all the steps as I described. So now what you're looking at is, so this steps like source data, manual ingestion, all of that, right? So here is where you can select the manifest, and it gives you what all the different jobs, where it ran, and all of that, and you can navigate through different steps, all of this, right? So I have a quick 2-minute video, so I'll just play that. It shows you the entire ingestion of a given set. Okay, so I'll just play this video. So now I'm selecting the data pipeline. So I'm selecting the wells. I'm selecting the manifest ingestion. So, and then I'm clicking on run. So now I'm submitting the job into EMR cluster. And now while it is running, so the first step, you run through this ingestion. So it takes about 30-40 seconds to run the ingestion because the well data is relatively small. So now we are running the ingestion. So sorry, we are running the manifest generation. So manifest generation takes the raw data and then it calculates, it parses the data and generates the temporary manifest. Now you need to validate, right? So now here is where it says those two data sets are not validated. So now I select and the next step is approve and ingest, right? So now I'll do the validation job. So I go back to the main screen and then I run the job. So again, it submits the new job. So what happens is it gives you all the configuration of all the files, whatever you want to ingest. So it's submitting the Spark job on this specific cluster. Again, all these are like jobs clusters, very lightweight clusters. And then now the next step is I'm doing the ingestion. So now I've validated. So now you see, if you see now these are ready for approval. So the validation has passed. So now you select and click on approve. So now this SME has approved this record for ingestion, right? So now that goes as part of your technical assurance. So now when you run, so now I'm running the ingestion now. So it's again running on the same cluster. So you submit these jobs. Now all these things like well logs, trajectory, formations, right? They can run on a separate cluster, right? So that is the beauty with the Spark. So where you can spawn off multiple jobs and run, as long as the header information is there, right? So for example, if you have the well board, the well log will be connected to that, right? So now you have the validation here. So approved, and then we can take a look at the final manifest ingestion. So now once the data is ingested, now you can do a metadata query. So those are the wells I'm searching. And now when I click on that, so that is where I see the latest ingestion. Okay. So at this point, I'm ready to take any questions if you have.
I also would like, before we close, I fixed the issue with the ad user, so I want to demo and vindicate myself. So let me do that real quick. Since we recorded my failure, I want to record my success too. So here's how we add a user, right? So I'll just add a user here with whatever happened, because what I did was I did a change this morning to make the pool ID optional as an environment variable, and but I forgot to rebuild the thing, so I just rebuilt. I couldn't avoid working with the code this morning. But as you can see, you can add the user quickly, right? So instead of going to the console and doing all of that, and also the entitlements on OSDU can be a thing, right? So instead of doing all of that, you can just with a simple command line do it. So Sachi, you said that there's going to be agents. I'm integrating with agents as well. So command line is still alive. Command line will never die if it depends on me, because I'll keep it alive and integrated with everything else. So that's all I had. Sorry about that, Yuri, but I wanted to make sure
That's
to
okay.
working.
Thank you, Vlad, and thank you, Sasha, for a great presentation and highlighting all the new capabilities. Let me share a few next steps. I think the questions in the chat have been answered. I'll share a few more things and then I'll stop the recording if anybody wants to ask any sessions live or any questions live. Thank you so much for attending. I think we had a great content today and we are planning to continue this. There are sessions already we're working on the Q3 and Q4, which is roughly August and November of this year. Our contact email is included there. And if you missed or confused on the terminology or what EDI is and you haven't been able to attend the first session that we did earlier this year, I posted the link in the chat, and you always feel free to contact the email I'm showing there or myself, ygubinov@amazon.com, to kind of help me direct you to the right resource. We also have a ask. We have a pipeline of the presentation we want to do, but if you want to highlight how you're innovating with energy data insights, what solutions are you building, or maybe even give us a challenge like, hey, this is the workflow I'm trying it. Maybe I'm facing some challenges. Let us know. We're more than happy to help. So let us know what we can do to help you to move your business objectives and business problems, and what do you want to see next. And with that, let me go ahead and pause the recording. And again, thank you everyone for attending, and I'll open up for informal Q&A.